Hi everybody, I'm Skip Alzheimer, and this is the 80 Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. This is a pre-recorded version because, I don't know, maybe we don't have power, or maybe the internet's down, or maybe I'm sick, or maybe I'm not at the archive. For whatever reason, I've recorded many of these as kind of backups, just in case. I just want to keep the show running whenever I can. So, hello everybody. I might be able to see comments, I might not, depending on whatever the situation is, but I appreciate you joining us. Let's see, we're going to get started with this film where I don't know the title. The title is actually clipped. It was made during World War II, and it's a film about work motivation, but I don't know much beyond that. Hopefully someone can chime in if they know it in the comments, and we can figure out where this film came from. So here it is, the untitled industrial motivational film during wartime.
Listen, do you hear it? That is time ticking away.
Disappearing into eternity, adding minutes, hours, days to all our yesteryears.
Time lost is never found again. It goes like the wind, like the tides, waiting for no men. Like electricity, time is of the moment only.
It cannot be stored. Its energy is instantaneous.
It must be used now or not at all. This very second will never come again.
By losing present time, we lose all time. There is no other time than now.
By time, all things are produced and judged.
Production is man hours, man minutes, man seconds. They add up, those seconds, those minutes, those hours.
They add up to man days, man years, and men's lives. Men's lives.
There's a responsibility.
Men's lives hinging on production, hinging on the right gun, the right tank, the right plane, the right ship, the right material being at the right place at the right time.
There's a responsibility.
Whose responsibility?
The foundry man's, the riveters, the order clerks, the shipping clerks, the foremans, the draftsmen's, the machinists, bookkeepers, welders, typists, inspectors, managers, assemblers.
Whose responsibility is it to get things done on time? Ask that of Bob Lockhart, why don't you? Bob Lockhart, Marine Private First Class, to whom time means nothing forevermore, in Pamascan, Island of Madura, in the South Java Sea.
Whose responsibility?
Ask that of Andy Fletcher, why don't you? Andy Fletcher, Chief Bosun's mate, for whom time ended at 1:19 degrees, 11 minutes, 33 seconds east, 14 degrees, 21 minutes, 40 seconds north. Ask the children of Mrs. Clark, why don't you? Patsy and Tommy, 3 and 6, who'll never know 30 or 60 since bombers came out of the dawn.
Whose responsibility? Whose responsibility is it, anyhow?
Surely someone has the answer. You, over there, how about it? Whose responsibility is it, mister, to see that we win this fight?
We got generals, ain't we? An admiral, and an Army and Navy and Air Force and Marines, ain't we?
Yes, sure. We've got the men, all right. Fighting men, all of them. Of America, of Canada, Australia, Britain, China, the Netherlands. Of all the United Nations. Millions of two-fisted men eager for battle. But bare fists won't win this war. Empty hands, empty stomachs, empty skies, empty oceans won't win this war. This is a war of machine guns, of rifles, of bullets, grenades.
This is a war of jeeps and scout cars and half-tracks, of anti-tank guns and shrapnel, of mortars and howitzers. This is a war of foodstuffs, food for our fighting men, food for our allies, food for the home front. food to feed lovers of liberty. This is a war of things like parachutes and life rafts, helmets and shoes, pop tents and shovels, and 1,000 other items of supplies.
This is a war of dive bombers, of long-range bombers, of interceptors, of fighter planes and transport planes.
This is a war of battleships, of cruisers, destroyers, carriers, mosquito boats, and landing boats, of tankers and cargo ships and troop ships. This is a war of machines. This is a war of production.
All-out production for all-out war. Production now, this minute, this second, to do the job that must be done. It's a job of speed and more speed and more speed. A job of using time now to fight time lost. Time lost. What becomes of it? What does it add up to? It adds up to this. It adds up to unmade ships and unmade planes, unmade tanks and unmade guns. 1,000,000+ necessities with which to fight and win this war, unmade. It adds up to Bataan and Corregidor, Hong Kong and Singapore, Burma and Java and Greece and Holland and Belgium and Poland and France. It adds up to the children of Mrs. Clark, the children and women of China, Malaya, the Philippines, England, Denmark and Norway, the Low Countries, Latvia, Czechoslovakia. It adds up to Andy Fletcher, chief bosun's mate, and the men on destroyers down in the China Sea, the men on the cruisers down in the Java Sea, the men on the freighters down in the North Sea. It adds up to Bob Lockhart, Marine Private First Class, and the men of Dunkirk and Smolensk, Hangzhou and Palembang, Luzon and Borneo.
Wait a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes. Who are you?
Bob Lockhart, the fellow you've been talking about. And there's something I want to tell you. I've been thinking. I've got plenty of time for that, you know. Plenty. And I've been thinking of how it's the little things that add up. The little things that don't seem so important one by one, but added all together mean defeat or victory. Like the nail, remember? For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the battle was lost. Yep, that's how they add up. Those little lost things. Those little lost things like seconds and minutes. I saw a chart once when I was a mill hand. And here's how it went.
When 6 million workers lose 1 minute a day each, there's 100,000 productive hours lost in that single day. When 100,000 productive hours are lost in a single day, there have been 34 work years lost between sunrise and sunset.
Between sunrise and sunset. You can win a war or lose a war between sunrise and sunset. A captain once told me that just one extra plane might swing the balance of power to victory. Think of all the extra planes that could be made from all the minutes that are lost between sunrise and sunset. Plenty, I'll bet you. Plenty. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. Maybe my number was up, come what may. But I'd have sure liked it better if I could have knocked down that flying monkey from the sky before he got me. And I might have, too, if only...
If only what, Bob?
Well, it's kind of hard to know where to start exactly. You see, turning out this stuff for war is more than only one plant's doing, or one shop's doing, or one man's doing. It takes a lot of plants and a lot of shops and a lot of men and women all geared in together, all of them moving like clockwork. And no matter where a man or a woman works, on the production line, in the accounting department, the clerical department, the estimating department, the drafting department, or anywhere else, each of their jobs has to dovetail perfectly if schedules are to be maintained. I suppose that where my number first started to be up was when Molly McGivern, a typist in the clerical department of a prime contractor, got a call from her boyfriend.
Well, I don't see why you can't use Eddie McCracken's car. He's got a C-card, hasn't he? And besides, how would I look all dressed up and going to a party on a bus? Well, all right. But if we've got to take a bus, we'll have to leave earlier, and that'll hardly give me any time at all to dress. Gee whiz.
Now, while Molly was fretting, her boss had received a rush order from Ordnance in Washington about changes to be made at once on a new AA gun that was destined for us. So the boss called in Molly and dictated instructions to be airmailed that night to a subcontractor, giving specifications for immediate changes to be made in production. Typing those specifications took time. And remember, Molly had a big date for that night. So she rushed to get done and made lots of mistakes. Well, correcting mistakes that you make when you're careless just doubles the time that you'd spend being cautious. So she added an hour to time lost already, and that caused more trouble. The order went airmail, but it missed the last pickup till later that evening, and that was too late for delivery next morning. See how it's growing? That snowball of lost time? And the bigger it gets, the more danger it has. But let's follow the order. After it got to the factory, it arrived in the third mail at 2 in the afternoon. And though it was marked rush, the girl in the mailroom thought otherwise. It just went in the pile with the rest of the stuff, marked for Murdoch, the order clerk. Now, Murdoch's okay, but he's gabby. So along about 4:30, when he wasn't far off from that order marked rush, he thought of a story and had to go tell it to Sweeney. And that reminded Sweeney of a story. And then Murdoch told another. And before you knew it, 15 minutes had slipped away. By the time Murdoch got back to work again, it was 15 minutes closer to quitting time. And he was still 20 minutes of work away from that order marked rush. Guess what happened? Of course. It stayed on his desk until morning, instead of reaching the shop superintendent in time for the night shift to start on it. So that was a second day lost. No, a third, because the night shift equals a day of work. And nobody seemed ever to think of the difference that even a minute can mean when you're fighting a war.
Well, that's just an excerpt. That just kind of ends. But I think you get the gist. It is over the top. And it's like a slideshow. There's not really any motion in it. But they lay it on pretty heavy. The guilt is pretty heavy, nonetheless. So it's pretty great. There's films also made around that time that basically talk about, if you don't put money towards war bonds, this is what happens. This is how, we are letting our troops down, and it could result in lives, etc. It's pretty great. This next film is a young American film, and I don't know if this is Centron or if this is McGraw Hill, but this is Fire Safety is Your Problem.
Fire. This is the terrible danger that you must guard against every moment, for this is something that can happen to you if you are careless even one time. Fighting fire is dangerous and backbreaking work. We honor the men who risk their lives to save our homes and belongings. But fighting fire is always second best, for in the end, there is always loss, measured in dollars, in valuable possessions, and often in human lives. You can use fire in many ways, but to use it safely, you must always be aware of dangers involved. Whether you're on a picnic or at home, you are always surrounded by flammable materials. Furniture, curtains, walls, flooring, your clothing, all will burn. It is up to you that fire and all the flammable things around you never get together. In order to do your part in keeping fire in its place, you need to know some of the danger points, places where you must use extra care to keep fire from getting out of hand. Never start a fire without proper supervision or instruction from an older person. Close the box before you strike the match. Why? Because uncovered matches of any kind multiply the danger. If a spark should reach them, or your lighted match should come too close, you would have a swish of roaring fire to deal with. Save yourself from such danger. Cover the box or packet before you strike the match. Always strike the match away from yourself. Be sure it does not touch your clothing. As soon as you have used a match, put it out. Put it all the way out. To make sure a match is out, break it. If it is cool enough to break, it won't set a fire you didn't intend to start. Always always put the fire screen in place when you have a fire in the fireplace to catch sparks which might pop out and set fire to the floors or furniture. Any unused matches should be put away immediately, well out of the reach of small children. If you always use matches safely yourself, you will be a good example for younger children. They should never be tempted by stray matches. Always keep matches put away in a safe place. A friction match gets its name because it will burst into flame when rubbed on a rough surface. You have seen friction matches ignite on stone and on wood. If one is hidden in the pocket of your jeans, it can ignite there too, from rubbing on the coarse fabric or other things in your pocket. Safety matches are different. Part of the chemicals are on the head of the match, and part of them are on the striking surface. The safety match will not ignite unless the two surfaces are rubbed together. If you carry matches, make sure that you carry paper matches or safety matches, or carry a small metal match holder like this to protect friction matches so that they will not burst into flame in your pocket. You may have to use fire as a part of your home duties. If so, it is your responsibility to keep the fire under control. Remember, if you have to use fire, use it. Don't play with it. Before you burn trash, look to see that there are no bottles or cans among the papers. In the heat of the fire, bottles may burst with explosive force. Wad the paper before putting it in the burner. Wadded paper will burn more slowly and not fly around so much. Put the cover on the trash burner carefully. Stand by to see that the fire does not escape to nearby grass. Even the time of day you choose to burn trash can be a safety measure. In early evening, the breeze often dies down, making this a safer time to burn rubbish. But no matter what time of day you choose, stand by to see that the fire is out before you leave it. The same rule applies to campfires or picnic fires. Be sure the fire is out, dead out, before you leave it. Smother the flame and the hot ashes with water or earth. In home closets, there are likely to be many flammable materials, and using a match is asking for trouble. So when you're at home in the dark and need a light, make it a flashlight. A flashlight beam is safe. It won't burn your clothing, your possessions, or your fingers, and it stays on as long as you need it. Sometimes it throws light on another safety measure which you should take to prevent fires: disposing of rubbish. Sort through your things and discard those you no longer need. If there are some that should be burned, burn them in the trash burner. If you save paper, remember that loose paper is a fire hazard. The hazard is reduced if the papers are bundled as they accumulate. It is safer to store paper in an outside building away from the house or garage, and safest of all to dispose of it promptly before any great amount accumulates. Anything that will burn should always be well away from any source of heat, such as a furnace, fireplace, or stove. Rags that have been soaked with wax or oil may be an unsuspected source of danger. You see, when oily rags are left lying about, it sometimes happens that they burst into flame by themselves. This is spontaneous ignition. But you can contain spontaneous ignition by storing such rags in tightly covered metal containers with an airspace between the can and the floor. The only safe way to deal with fire is to prevent it. To prevent fire, keep these things in mind. Close the cover of the box before you strike a match, and strike the match away from yourself. Be sure the match is out before you throw it away. Break the match before you discard it. Always always store matches in a safe place, out of the reach of small children. Get rid of rubbish and trash as it accumulates. If you need light in a place where there are things stored, use a flashlight. Burn trash with care. When you burn trash, follow the rules for fire safety. Cover the trash burner, burn only on a calm day, and be sure the fire is out before you leave it. Store flammable materials such as old newspapers and oily rags with care in a safe place, either outside the house or in a tightly covered metal container. Anytime you are seated with a large group, whether in a school assembly, a theater, or a public auditorium, look around as soon as you find your place to locate the nearest exit. Note exactly where the exit is and how far it is from you, so that you could go there even if all the lights were out. In spite of everything, fire sometimes does get out of hand. The sirens shriek that a fire is destroying someone's home or belongings. If it should happen to you, you must know exactly what to do. If you are in school, leave the room quickly and in orderly fashion, exactly as you have practiced during your fire drills. Make it a point to know and follow your own fire drill rules. Go to the exit where your group is supposed to leave the building, but stay with your group so that if there are any last-minute changes in the plan, your teacher can tell everyone in the group at one time. If you should discover a fire in your home, your first thought should be to get yourself and others in the house to safety. Warn others in the house at once. Be sure everyone knows of the danger and warn them to leave the house quickly. Then get out yourself. Don't try to take any possessions. You could lose the most precious one of all, your life. Call the fire department, but do not try to call from a burning house. Get out first and go to the nearest safe place to call. Give your address clearly and distinctly and wait to have it repeated back to you so that you can be sure it was received correctly. Fighting fire is a job for firemen, not for you. Warn others to get out yourself, then call the fire department and let the men who are trained in firefighting take over. But there is one time when you must do the job of putting out the fire yourself, if your clothing should catch fire. Do not run. Quickly roll up in anything that will smother the flame. If your clothing catches fire, smother the flames. Do not run. Young people have a big stake in fire prevention. You can be a full-time fire prevention agent, always on the lookout for possible dangers, and always ready to cope with them because you plan for fire safety, think of fire safety, and live for fire safety. Fire safety is your problem.
I love it. Think with fire safety, live for fire safety. It's kind of glorious. And, I love films that really kind of say, like, well, kids use fire. It's not like don't avoid fire entirely. It's like, no, this is how you do it. And I have a film that's called Let's Make a Fire that basically shows, like, how do you make a fire? Because that was something that was expected of kids in a certain generation. So, of course, you want to teach them how to make a fire. It's just like playing with knives. Like, this is how you'd play with a knife correctly. Don't just keep them away from them, because they will encounter knives out in the world. All right, so this film is beautiful color, and it's a travelogue film, and I believe it's Pan Am. I need to watch. Yeah. So this is Flight to California, and so it's showing you all the glorious, the travel, and once you get to California, what you can do there. So enjoy.
Nighttime at a busy airport as the big plane rolls slowly and gracefully into loading position.
Announcing Ambassador Flight 93 for Los Angeles. Now boarding at Concourse Gate number 8. All aboard Flight 93, please.
When the trim, smiling hostess appears in the doorway, you know everything is shipshape on board. First flight or 50th, there's no excitement quite like it. A novelty that never wears off. The sounds and sights that spell modern age in transportation. It's a wonderful feeling you get as you board your plane. No matter who you are, something happens to you inside and makes you feel, well, sort of sorry for those who are going to be left behind. A warm welcome for everyone from the pretty girl in the trim uniform, always on call to lend a hand. Cheerful, smiling service for every passenger on board. A pair of newlyweds, Edie and Henry, fresh from their wedding, honeymoon bound to California. Edie and Henry looked over every travel folder they could get their hands on. But it didn't take them long to decide that California was the place they wanted to go on their honeymoon. Small fry en route, in the special care of the senior hostess, to be delivered safe and sound in Los Angeles on a visit to Grandma and Grandpa. The new mode in honeymoon travel, but the same old way of saying, I love you.
Final call. Ambassador Flight 93 for Los Angeles. Now boarding at Concourse Gate number 8. All aboard Flight 93, please.
To me, that means I'm on my way home. To my family, my house, my work at the studio. It was good to be on board, following the other passengers, and now coming forward to my seat, about halfway down. Seemed like pleasant company. Now we're ready to go, so take it away.
Leveled off and heading west toward California and the Pacific. A little help from the hostess, and then ready to settle down in solid comfort. The younger fellow is Richard Carlson, Hollywood actor. The older man, a businessman from the East.
He was a big-time industrial executive. I recognized his name. When I told him my name, not a glimmer. Asked me what business I was in. When I said actor, he said, must be interesting work. My ego took quite a jolt. But I recovered quickly. A movie fan, bless her, nice-looking girl a few seats forward, kept staring at me. Newlyweds looked like to me.
I looked around, and there he was, Richard Carlson. Henry didn't think I ought to talk to him. All I wanted was his autograph, naturally. Neither of us had a pencil, but I can always depend on my Henry. He had a pen. It was certainly a wonderful start to our trip, meeting a movie star before we were hardly even off the ground. Everybody nice and friendly, like we all knew each other.
Cruising at 300 miles an hour, a steady course due west. And now, mealtime, an always welcome part of air travel. As part of the service, of course, a full meal. Soup, meat, salad, vegetables, dessert, coffee, milk, or tea. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Served hot from special galley equipment. There's nothing like relaxing high in the sky, whether it be the deep slumber of childhood lulled to sleep by the drone of the motors, or the restful calm of old age in quiet contemplation. And almost before you know it, you're looking down at some of the world's finest scenery, like the Grand Canyon, for instance. No need for words to describe this sight.
The other side of the Rocky Mountains has always meant one thing to me: California. Oranges in your own backyard, palm trees in the streets, Hollywood, Beverly Hills, San Francisco. And now, in only a few more minutes, we're going to be there. All the things we'd read about and heard about. And it was all going to be ours, Henry's and mine, on this 2-week trip. And only a matter of hours from home to California. It was almost too good to be true. But it was true. There's our plane landing at the Los Angeles International Airport. I could feel the plane taxiing. I think that's what they call it, headed for the terminal. And so we were here at last, in California, land of my dreams. I could hardly wait for the plane to stop and let us off.
California, here we are. Just as bright and shiny as I left it. And am I glad to see it. This is what I call living. Goodbye, Mr. Big Business. Good luck. I was anxious to get along, but somehow I couldn't get that young honeymoon couple out of my mind. Their first look at California at ground level was really something to see. They were the nicest pair of honeymooners I'd come across in a long time. I decided on a little wedding present for them, to do what I could to make their visit a memorable one. I invited them to come along, and before they had a chance to turn me down, I hustled them on to meet someone I hoped was waiting for me. It was wonderful to be home, and more wonderful to catch sight of Mona up there near the gate. Mona, that's Mrs. Carlson. No movie director needed here. It all came natural. I guess Mona and I acted sort of like a pair of newlyweds. Mona liked Edie and Henry on sight and fell in with my idea of helping them enjoy their California holiday. This is where we live, in Beverly Hills. We like it fine. So did Edie and Henry. But they spent more time in the pool than in the house, which was okay with us, that is, with Mona and me. Seeing to it that they had lots of fun, well, that's what we were concerned with. It was a pleasant little chore, and I was grateful to Mona for pitching in and making things pleasant for our visitors. It was fun for us, too, just watching their happiness, the way they played and teased each other. A couple of kids on the loose with not a care in the world.
Richard Carlson, Dick, that is, didn't start his new picture for a few days, so he drove us around town. Want to see the stars, Holmes? This man is a guide for tourists. Here's a busload touring Movie Land, the sights of Hollywood and Beverly Hills. Dick drove us around to see the stars, Holmes. Imagine, taken on a tour of Movie Land by a movie actor himself. That's what I call living. Only a tumble-down shack, but it's home to Cary Grant. Or is it Lana Turner? I get them mixed up. Another little place called home, Pickfair. Imagine having to mow all that lawn.
Only a few minutes drive and you're on the beach at Santa Monica. One of dozens of swimming and play beaches along the blue Pacific shoreline. Mile after mile of sand warmed by the sun. Beach beauties everywhere, and art lovers willing to look. This is paradise for thousands of sun worshipers, Californians by birth or adoption, and visitors in almost equal number from every state in the Union.
Then Dick drove us around to the different studios, and I found out, surprise, most of them are not really in Hollywood at all, but in small towns close by. They all look pretty much alike on the outside, but what I wanted to know was, How about going inside? Dick explained it's pretty hard for visitors to get inside these days. But he did manage to fix it for us. And that's how we got to see how movies are made.
Acting as guide for Edie and Henry was a real pleasure. Although he didn't show it much, Henry got just as big a bang out of things as Edie. The Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, for instance. They considered it one of the most interesting sights in Hollywood. In fact, their enthusiasm made me kind of interested in another close look myself. So we parked the car and walked over to the forecourt.
So these are the famous footprints I've heard so much about. Sonia Henney, Harold Lloyd. That really goes back before my time. But here's my boy, Jack Benny. And here's Betty Grable, Henry's girl, next to me, of course. You know, I could be a Hollywood star myself. For size, anyway.
The next morning, Edie and Henry started out on a tour south along the coast. Their first stop, picturesque Balboa, named, of course, after the Spanish explorer who discovered the Pacific Ocean. A few miles farther south on the coast route, Laguna Beach, beach resort and Southern California artist colony. And then, 3 hours from Hollywood, the city of San Diego, important United States Naval Center.
Our next stop, and for the first time in my life, I was in a foreign country. The border town of Tijuana, Mexico. No trouble at all getting across the border. I mean things like passports and such. They were glad to have us. And we were glad to be there, which is putting it mildly. A few routine questions, and we were on our way down Tijuana's main street, ready to see Mexico and let Mexico see us. Food, Mexican food, out in the open. Hot, and I do mean hot, tamales, tortillas, tacos, enchiladas, and a few other tidbits we could hardly swallow, let alone pronounce. This is some documentary evidence for the natives back home. Senor Henry and his muchacha, Senora Edie, on their caballo in old Mexico.
One evening at our house, Edie asked about other places to visit and things to see during other seasons of the year, wintertime, for instance. Well, that was all I needed. That was my hobby. So in less time than it takes to tell it, and before Mona could change the subject, I had the projection machine out and ready to roll. Trouble with color home movies is that you got to keep finding new victims to look at them. For the benefit of anyone who might be saying, what colossal conceit, the Hollywood credit system is very strict. When you do anything in filmmaking, you just have to take screen credit, even if you don't want it, I think. Anyway, what we're looking at now is Palm Springs, one of America's famous winter resorts, November to about April. Sunshine playground for picture people, for thousands of Californians every year, and a surprising number of people from the East, refugees from New York and Chicago, snow and cold, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Boston, sleet and bitter winds. This is the annual Circus Week parade. Frankly, I'm pretty proud of this footage. In color yet. It was a lot of fun, the parade itself, and shooting it, especially close shots here and there. Now, as we say in pictures, we dissolve to the Tournament of Roses Parade in Pasadena, annual event of world renown held on New Year's Day. Floats, bands, beautiful girls, stunning floral creations rolling down Colorado Boulevard to the cheers of thousands of people gathered from every part of the Union, watching this fabulous riot of moving color and design, a spectacle of such sights and sounds as can be enjoyed nowhere else on Earth. Back to summertime and my Catalina footage. I have a tendency to wax poetic when I think of Santa Catalina Island. It's a kind of a dream world from the time you step off the boat at Avalon Town, only 2 hours by boat from the mainland, to going home time. I happen to like birds. At Catalina's famous bird farm, I had plenty to shoot at. This is a big-beaked Demetribus, as the ornithologist would say. Another colorful and big-beaked resident of the bird farm. Couldn't get much action out of this one either. On the other hand, meet my friends Penny Penguin and family out for a stroll, encouraged by a couple of small fry. Speedboating along the shores of Catalina, your face whipped by flying spray, on a day too full of delights to remember them all, on a gem of an island off the coast of Southern California. Now we fade in on some of California's old missions. Wonderful old buildings, churches really, established by the early Spanish padres and still in use today. Through them was the history of early California written, before George Washington and the Revolutionary War. Here we see the famous Mission San Juan Capistrano, known throughout the world as the mission of the swallows who return in the spring of every year, always on the same day from their winter exile. Peace, quiet, and beauty dwell here, this beautiful garden of many flowers, centuries removed from the hustle and bustle of the world we live in today. And now to another California vacation land, Lake Arrowhead, about an hour and a half from Los Angeles. Name your holiday, and it's yours at Arrowhead. Mine happens to be water sports, and here it is. Golf, of course, for the tournament player and the duffer. No, that's not me swinging like a champion. Wish it were. My game is strictly for the birds, in the low hundreds. Top prize money, perfect climate all year round, some of the most interesting courses in the country. These are elements that make California tournaments so attractive to the top pros. Put a camera in my hands, give me a roll of color film, and here's what I bring in. A fine photo of yachting fun in California waters. And now, a touch of dash, a soupçon of excitement, a fistful of thrills. If you're squeamish about spills, close your eyes quick. Because, wow, there he blows. Goodbye now. The sport of kings is practiced in Southern California. This happens to be the clubhouse of the Hollywood Park racetrack. But I was able to get better racing footage at Santa Anita, pounding down the stretch for home. Also, I reluctantly add the fade-out of this Richard Carlson home movie production.
The morning after that swell movie show, Henry and I found ourselves being taken out to the airport. We were leaving Southern California. I don't know why I should have felt so weepy. It was only a trip. But this was different somehow. Everything had been so perfect.
Announcing TWA Flight 1 for San Francisco.
Now boarding at concourse gate number 4. All aboard flight 1, please. We had made wonderful friends. We'd seen so many wonderful things. It was as though we sort of belonged here. The Carlsons, well, there's no use trying to tell how we felt about them. All I can say is that I wish every traveler as much friendship as we found up there in the sky, and then in sunny Southern California. And now we're taking off again, north to San Francisco. Goodbye, Richard and Mona Carlson, and thanks a million. It's really been wonderful. And maybe someday we'll be back again. Flying toward more good times in San Francisco. Below us, vacation spots we hope to visit someday. Monterey and Carmel, along the coast, for instance. The big trees, enormous stands of giant redwoods, which were mere saplings hundreds of years ago. And Yosemite, full of scenic wonders. Impressive Half Dome. Wonderful wild country for pack trips. And high, lacy waterfalls reflecting the sun, splashing down steep cliffs. We're told this is ski country, too. All winter sports, for that matter. Personally, I go for a nice warm fireplace at home. But for those who like snow, and what goes with it, like ski chasing down mountains, well, here it is. San Francisco just a few minutes away now. Everyone says it's the New York of the West Coast. Although it's not as large as Los Angeles, San Francisco has the reputation of being much more cosmopolitan. There's the Golden Gate Bridge. And like all California cities on the coast, surf bathing only a few minutes from the heart of the city. About the first thing we did after landing was to take a boat trip around the bay. It's a lovely trip and a wonderful skyline view of the Bay City. As exciting a sight as we'd seen on the entire trip. We're passing under the Oakland Bay Bridge. I believe this is the second longest bridge in the world. Here's the ferry building at the end of famous Market Street. We'd heard about the cable cars, of course, and one of the first things we did was to get on board. Although, frankly, it looked a little shaky to me. It was quite a sight to see the conductor and the motorman turn the car around at the end of the line. I thought all that went out with the gay 90s. Quaint, that's the word for it. I think a one-way trip will be enough for me. Rising from the crest of Nob Hill, the famous Mark Hopkins Hotel. And this is the view from the top of the Mark, looking toward the Oakland Bay Bridge and the cities beyond. Chinatown. San Francisco has the largest Chinese community outside of China, so it says in the guidebook. Very oriental, very. Intriguing gift shops, full of lovely Chinese jewelry and other exquisite knickknacks. Henry got kind of worried, but I promised I'd go easy, and I did. Within reason, that is. Here's a really fabulous place, San Francisco's famous Fisherman's Wharf, where hundreds of fishing boats bring in tons of fish, caught not far offshore outside the Golden Gate. All kinds of shell and other fish, sold right then and there on the wharf. We'd already had our lunch in Chinatown, but how could anyone resist those tantalizing odors? Plenty of wharf restaurants, marvelous fish menus, and wonderful friendly service. Several places you pick out your own food, and they prepare it for you. Henry's not much of a seafood eater, strictly a hamburger man, but even Henry had to try some of this. Well, this food was all and more we'd heard. This wasn't eating for hunger. This was strictly for pleasure. And now it's really goodbye. Goodbye to California. No longer the land of our dreams, but now the land of wonderful memories. Goodbye from Henry and me, until we come back again someday. We hope.
And from California to you, Edie and Henry, a very pleasant goodbye until we meet again. For you, California means holiday time and the pursuit of unforgettable memories. And that's what it means to thousands who come here every year. Something for everyone. On the beaches, along mountain trails, at the resorts, in the cities, those looking for the vigorous life, and those in search of the quiet warmth of the all-embracing sun. This, then, is California, the Golden State. All things to all people. A great place to live, a wonderful place to visit. Truly a vacation wonderland.
So it's TWA, not Pan Am. I knew it was one of those defunct airlines. I do have quite a few Pan Am ones that are travel logs to different countries. And I have one that's to New York. Maybe I'll show that again in an upcoming show, or show that in an upcoming show. But thanks everybody for joining me today. It is pre-recorded, as I said, but trying to not duplicate anything I've shown in the past and show you some great stuff. You can support us, even though I don't have my internet or maybe don't have access to the archive. I'll still be able to drink coffee that you buy me. So you can go to buymeacoffee.com/avgeeks. You can also go to avgeeks.com and see other shows that we've done and buy DVDs. And also just hit like or subscribe or ring the notification bell about upcoming shows. Would love to see you in the future. We will have another show on the next weekday at 1 p.m. Because this is pre-recorded. I don't know what day it is. So everybody have a great rest of your day. As always, we look to the film can to see what it tells us, and it tells us to please rewind and love each other. It sounds like a good advice. So everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you again on the next weekday at 1 p.m.